June. Ron and Mother and I eat breakfast together at the mess hall. School, Mother reminds me. Ron looks happy. He has work too. He will teach the older children. I must hurry, Ron tells me, so I won't be able to walk with you to school today, okay? Ron does not look at me while he waits for my response, but Mother does. I nod and Mother says, okay, at the same time. School is a good place to talk, Ron says. I look at my plate. Give her time, Mother says softly. Does she think I cannot hear her? Ron pats my arm. Talk when you're ready, he says, but school is a good place. After breakfast, Mother tells me to change into my best dress before we go to school. There are many students and parents at Block 7. Most, but not all students have Japanese faces like mine. Signs with grade levels are posted on the buildings. Adults stand near the signs. Adults who are not soldiers or policemen, but teachers. Many of these adults also have Japanese faces like mine. There is one adult who watches with unfriendly eyes. He is the warden, Mother whispers to me. He is in charge of everyone. Mother finds a sign that says grades 4, 5, and 6, and we get in line. I'm happy to see that Ron's classroom is in this barracks too. He is standing near a sign that says grades 7, 8, and 9. 3 other teachers stand near this barracks, and lines have formed in front of each teacher. The high school students are in another barracks, and so are the younger children. Finally, I'm at the front of my line, and Mother presents me to the teacher. This teacher has a kind face. Her blonde hair is twisted around her head. She reaches her hand towards me and smiles. I shut her hand for a second. I know that I should tell her my name. Manami. Mother says it for me. Then Mother leans in close to me. There is a frown on her forehead. Her eyes are very sad. All will be well, she tells me. Then she leaves. I go inside with the teacher and the other students. This schoolroom looks like my family's room in the Barracks 8. Just the furniture is different. But in this schoolroom there are no desks, only long benches and one table with a chair. The teacher tells us to sit down, and I'm glad that Kimmy has saved the spot next to her for me. Just like the island, Kimmy says. I look out the window. If this is just like the island, I would smell salt and fish. I would feel a breeze. Eugen and Grandfather would have walked me to school. Mrs. Brown would be standing at the front of the room. It was not just like the island. The teacher writes her name on a large piece of white butcher paper tacked to the wall. Miss Rosalie. I hear my classmates repeat her name. It is beautiful. It reminds me of ocean waves rolling up and down. Miss Rosalie passes a book around and asks us each to read it to her. When Kimmy hands me the book, she whispers, "Read, Manami." I like the words about seeds and trees. Can you read this? Miss Rosalie asks me. Of course I can read it. I just read it. Manami? Miss Rosalie asks again. Manami does not speak, Kimmy says. She cannot speak? Miss Rosalie asks. Not since we came here, Kimmy says. Miss Rosalie hands me a slate and a piece of chalk. Can you write? I take the chalk and slate. I draw her name, curling like waves. I draw 2 eyes and a sharp nose and pointed ears. Eugen, Kimmy says. Miss Rosalie passes the book to the other students, and I set my chalk and slate on the bench beside me. Later, when the other students go outside for recess, Miss Rosalie keeps me inside. I would like to be your friend, Manami, she tells me. I wonder what you are thinking. She points towards the administration buildings. I live out that way, she says. I know the doctor who lives there, with his family as well, and other workers from the outside too, but the soldiers who are stationed along the barbed wire fence and in the guard towers live outside the camp. The workers' block is like our block, with fathers and mothers and children and gardens, but it is also different from our block. The children in that block do not have to stay inside a wire fence. They can leave to go shopping or see a movie. Some of those children go to our school, but the older high school students do not. They get on a bus to go to a different school. If they wanted to, they could also follow the road to the ocean and get on a ferry and follow the ocean to the island. For the rest of the morning I think about this, about the other children who can go outside the fence, the other children who do not have their dogs taken away from them. When school is dismissed at lunchtime, my classmates laugh and chatter and say goodbye to the teacher. The boys are in a rush to leave, and they jostle me on the way out. Kimmy gives me a hug goodbye, just like on the island. At the door, Miss Rosalie holds out some paper and a pencil to me. I look down because I feel too shy to take her gift. Her hand opens mine and places the paper and pencil in it. That night, I take a piece of paper and prop it on my cot. It leans against the wall. I consider drawing Miss Rosalie's name again, or drawing ocean waves again, or Eugen's face. Before I sleep, I put the paper and pencil under the mattress of my cot. Perhaps I will draw tomorrow. This is how school goes each day. Students sit quietly. Miss Rosalie passes a book around. Students read from the book. The book slides past me into the next pair of waiting hands. Miss Rosalie writes new words on a big piece of paper, and we practice spelling them, taking turns to write the new words over and over and over on the slates that we share. Miss Rosalie says she will bring more when she can. We have recess, and then we work on numbers. Miss Rosalie separates us into small groups, one group in each corner of the classroom. We sit on the floor, and she gives us math problems to solve on our slates, adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing. She makes her way from one group to the next. Each day, more and more students come to class. Rio counts the students for Miss Rosalie. The first day, there were 21 students. After the week, the number is 35. This room is crowded with bodies on benches. All of the rooms are crowded with bodies on benches. It is hard for so many bodies to keep still, but we do. For a few hours between breakfast and lunch, Miss Rosalie teaches. When we hear the clang that announces lunch, classes are over. Miss Rosalie stands near the doorway as students hurry to lunch lines. I stay at the back, always the last to leave. Each day, at the door, she gives me paper. Then I peek inside Ron's room, which is next door to Miss Rosalie's, until he waves and tells me that he'll see me at dinner. I have started to draw on Miss Rosalie's papers at home when I sit with Grandfather, and when each drawing is done, I put it under my mattress with the blank paper. I decide to give Miss Rosalie a gift. I rise earlier than usual. Ron and Father are still not home. They must have gone to the showers. Grandfather rises earlier than anyone else. I can tell by his wet hair that he has already been to the showers this morning. Mother watches as I look through my pictures to find one for Miss Rosalie. When I find the one that I like, I write Miss Rosalie's name on it. For your teacher, Mother asks? That's a good choice. I want to give it to her this morning before breakfast, before the other children arrive. With my picture in my hand, I run to Block 7 and climb the stairs to the barracks where Miss Rosalie's classroom is. I don't hear or see anyone. Miss Rosalie might not be there yet. I wonder if I should knock on the door. Before I decide, the door opens. "Good morning," Miss Rosalie says. I give her the folded paper. Miss Rosalie unfolds it. Father's fishing boat, close to shore. "I wondered what you might draw," she says. It is still early enough to be very quiet. There is a little wind to blow dust. "Is this where you lived?" she asks. "It's beautiful." On the walk back to Mother, I still think about which picture I will give Miss Rosalie next. Before classes begin, all of the students and teachers line up in front of a flagpole in the schoolyard. It is new, but we knew it was coming. We have been practicing for it. Mr. Warden raises the flag. "Salute!" he booms. I place my hand on my chest, just like on the island, just like Miss Rosalie had us practice. "Pledge!" he booms. Voices drone on around me. "Girl!" Mr. Warden booms. "Pledge!" Mr. Warden's long finger points towards me. My heart races. Kimmy pinches my arm. "Pledge, Menominee," she says. Mr. Warden takes heavy steps towards me. I have a hard time catching my breath. "Menominee," Ron says. Have they forgotten about the dust coating my throat? "She cannot, sir," Miss Rosalie says. "She cannot speak." Mr. Warden stares at me for a moment before stomping back to the flagpole. When the pledge begins again, I feel Miss Rosalie's arms around my shoulders. She pulls me to her. I close my eyes. Mr. Warden plays a song over the loudspeaker. I listen to the words about liberty and freedom, and my heartbeat slows down. On the island, I thought that I understood those words and the song, but now I'm not so sure. When the song is finished and Mr. Warden has left, everyone goes to their classrooms. Inside, children, Miss Rosalie says. She pulls me along with her. She stands in front of the class while we find our seats. As I read, think about the changes in nature as spring turns into summer, she says. You may use a slate to draw if you'd like. When the slate basket passes down my row, I take a slate and a piece of chalk. It is not normal for our classroom to be so silent. A slate bangs to the floor and many children jump. If Mother were here, she would say, "All is well." Miss Rosalie does not say, "All is well." She reads poems about spring and summer and honeybees and budding flowers. My hand flits over my slate, dipping and bobbing, scratching and resting, chalk feathers from one line to another, circling and looping until I am finished. "Beautiful," Miss Rosalie says when she picks up my slate. She bends down to look into my eyes. This is how I picture the seasons changing, too. At dinner time, Ron and I arrive early to eat with Mother. Before we even have time to take one bite or one sip, a flash lights up the sky, followed by a crash. "Finally, the rain," Mother says. She grabs my hand and drags me to the door. Ron follows. Others crowd behind us. And then the rain comes. Mother pulls us outside. She holds my hand, spinning us around and around. Others join in our rain dance. The rain does not drip or drop. The rain pours, like a water pump, like the showers. It pours until the laughing faces and twirling feet stop their happy dance. It pours until Mother begins to frown. "Hurry, children," she says. "We must save the plants." We run to Mother's garden. The water pours so fast that there's already a pond forming in the yard. Mother touches her batter plants one by one. The pouring rain has pounded them into the ground. Fragile stems are broken. Tiny leaves float free. Mother kneels and pulls me to her, wrapping her arms around my waist. She cries into my stomach. And still the rain pours. Ron joins Mother on the ground. And then, as quick as it started, the rain stops. "We will save them," Ron promises Mother. "They cannot be saved," Mother says. "We will try," Ron promises again. He helps Mother stand and leads her back to the mess hall. "What is this place?" I hear her ask. I look around Mother's garden. There are more plants to save. I make a promise. This garden will not die. Ron finds me in the garden, my hands thick with mud. "There you are," he says. "Come on, you need to eat dinner. Then I'll help you with this." Later that week, we're all surprised when Father joins us for dinner. Mother and Ron and I are sitting down when Father enters the mess hall. Ron apologizes for our already having started to eat. I scoot down the bench to make room. Mother pours steaming water into her cup and sets it in front of Father. Father does not have a plate. "Would you like me to go get you some food?" Mother asks. "I'll eat in a minute," he says. Father rests his hand on his chest. Then he pulls an envelope from the inside of his shirt. "A letter from Kiko," he says, handing it to Mother. Mother reads quickly. "No," she says, and passes it to Ron. Ron reads slowly. "Father," he says, "I cannot." "This will prove that you are American," Father says. "Why must I prove it?" Ron asks. "I know what is in my head and in my heart." Father and Ron stare at each other. Many others at our table stare too. When they see that I notice their stares, they look away. Father leaves the mess hall. He does not eat rice and chicken with us. He does not drink his hot water. "Mother," Ron says. "I understand," she says. "I do not wish it either. I am curious, but I can be patient." After we eat, Mother returns to the kitchen to finish her work shift. "Kiko suggests I join the army," Ron whispers. "There are rumors that soon the army will welcome those of us who are living here. Kiko says that if I join the army, I will be free to leave this place. But what kind of freedom is that? Should I fight for an army that imprisons my own family?" It is like old times. Ron tells me what Mother and Father do not want me to hear. Ron hands me a slip of paper. "This is for you," he says. "Dear sister," it reads. "I know you are a comfort to Mother. Study and learn so that one day you can live with me and go to college. Kiko." Once I wanted to live with Kiko and go to college. Now I just want to go back to the island.